know when you meet someone and they swear that all of their exes were psychos, and then you slowly realize that, oh, wait, I'm talking to the person who was the problem in the relationship? Unrelatedly, the Young Turks.
Are you guys laughing right now? Are you amused by that joke? That was a joke delivered by the allegedly professional comedian Francesca Fiorentini, who's a comedian that sometimes does politics because, you know, her real passion is comedy. And right there, that's what she decided to go with in this particular video. Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Sean, and today we're going to talk about Francesca Fiorentini releasing a video about her victimization, about how it was oh so devastating for Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks to part ways with her, and how, if you really think about it, even though she was asking to get fired for the sole purpose of jumping off of TYT in order to make them look bad so she could prop herself up, she's the real victim in this. She's the one who really suffered at the hands of her employer of 10 years because, oh my god, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, I don't know if you guys know this, Francesca decided to turn down a full-time employment gig at Al Jazeera, which is where she worked before the Young Turks, in order to be a contractor at TYT, only to discover that that position she took as a contractor was in fact a contractor position. That's really sad. That is really quite heartbreaking. That is really, really quite devastating news for her to find out 10 years later. And she is really just genuinely the real victim in this, because you can't expect her to consciously make a decision as an adult and then face the consequences of the choices that she 100% made. Just like you can't expect her to ask to be fired consistently through all of her actions over the course of months against the Young Turks, against Ana Kasparian and Cenk Uygur, and then not play the victim when she got exactly what she wanted in the first place, which was to be fired from the network. Yeah, obviously this video is ridiculous and absurd from top to bottom, and we're gonna break this whole thing down. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
And I'm going to make this as brief as possible because there are a million far more important and pressing things going on right now. As you know, actual fascism. But to make it brief, Cenk Uygur, the head of TYT, recently hath forboten me from appearing on any TYT shows because, in part, I said that him capitulating to right-wing framing on many issues meant he was, quote, acting like a bitch. And the truth is, he was.
So to be 100% clear, Francesca Fiorentini was in fact calling her boss Cenk Uygur all of those names on her podcast, which was being distributed by the Young Turks network. However, even though she did do that, she was still appearing on TYT shows, for example, The Damage Report, post her doing that, because that wasn't actually the breaking point. I actually believe that there were two things that made Cenk make this decision. First and foremost, Francesca Fiorentini has been attacking Ana Kasparian relentlessly, lying about her, smearing her, doing all these crazy things in order to go against her because Ana has decided to take up some sensible positions on crime and government policy. And apparently, Francesca is very offended that they would dare blame a black woman mayor, Karen Bass, for her lackluster response to the California wildfires. That was something that she was legitimately upset about, and she brought on a guest in order to cry about on her own show. But even that wasn't the tipping point. Even that wasn't the thing that made Cenk make the decision. It was the fact that she had asked for her podcast to no longer be distributed by the Young Turks because the Young Turks was an evil, horrible, terrible, immoral company, and Cenk decided, well, if you're going to pull your stuff off of our network and say we're too immoral to distribute you, then I guess we should be too immoral to pay you anymore, so you're fired.
Recently, Francesca Fiorentini asked us at TYT to take her podcast, Habituation Room, off the network, and we happily agreed to that. And today, I'm going a little further, and I'm going to take Francesca off the network entirely. So you won't see her on any of the TYT shows going forward.
And now Francesca's the victim, even though she 100% was setting this up in the first place.
And I'll explain that a little bit later. But first, some backstory. So I have been a contractor at TYT for 10 years now, appearing on all of the shows as a fill-in host, as a guest host during election coverage, on the TYT main show, on The Damage Report, and on Indisputable, along with a lot of other shows. I have always hopped on at the last minute, always helped out in a pinch. I guest host last minute, and yes, I was paid. And if you're watching this and you are a TYT contributor and you are not getting paid, stop going on TYT until you do. I've never been a full-time employee, never got healthcare, never got maternity leave when I had my child. But back in 2018, I was hired for a 6-month contract to pilot a show for $3,000 a month. Then, however, their funding bottomed out and I was let go. And they broke their contract. My reps at the time thought I should sue to get the full 6 months of payment and work that I was owed, but I didn't, because I told them that TYT was good people, and I wanted to maintain my relationship.
So right here you have Francesca Fiorentini saying that she was a contractor the whole time on the Young Turks. For 10 years, she worked as a contractor. I mean, there was a brief period of time where she worked as an employee. They offered her a 6-month employment contract. However, when the money dried up, they ended up having to terminate that contract. And even though she was advised to sue the Young Turks, sue their stupid faces, she decided not to because she's such a good person and she thought the Young Turks such a great group of people and she didn't want to hurt them or negatively impact them. Again, what a great story, Francesca, about how you're the hero, how you're not interested in money, and all of that. But the thing is, you're still complaining about being a contractor. And again, being a contractor can be a really crap position. A lot of people feel like they can only get work as a contractor, so they feel stuck, and then they don't have benefits, days off, and all that other stuff. And to be clear, if you're in that position as a regular, ordinary worker, I do feel bad for you to a certain extent. That being said, Francesca Fiorentini on her own show says that she turned down full-time employment at Al Jazeera, which is where she used to work before being a contractor at the Young Turks, and she did so she could do gigs, like, by the way, work at the Young Turks.
You have had sometimes bad luck, like with AJ Plus and stuff. I mean, it's just...
No, I really didn't actually. I just am allergic to money, Emma. Just don't worry about it. I left AJ Plus. AJ Plus
you're so
offered
deserving,
me.
and it's
AJ
just,
Plus offered me in 2018 when they were moving to DC a very handsome salary that I turned down because I had been there for, at that point, 4 years, and I wanted to move on, and I wanted to move to LA. So that's what happened to me. And I moved to LA not for TYT. I moved to LA to actually pitch more shows, do more comedy, meet more people, get managers and agents and whatnot. And I did. So that is, I've had a lot of luck, and I've also turned a lot of down. So I just want to name that.
So to be clear, we have a woman who turned down full-time employment with benefits and a higher salary in order to be a contractor, now complaining that she doesn't have the benefits because she's a contractor, and she doesn't have the same salary that Al Jazeera would have paid her that she turned down in order to be a contractor. So again, Francesca not holding herself accountable for her own decisions. She's not acting as an active agent in her life, and this is something that you see time and time again throughout the course of the language that she uses. So, of course, she immediately pivots to Ana Kasparian, the great Satan in her mind, the true evil one, because Ana dareth question the left-wing orthodoxy, and she knows that, in part, her nasty, disgusting smears on Ana are probably what motivated Cenk more so than what she said about him, or even the podcasting thing. I think the podcasting thing was the thing that finally made it click, and that's why she's gone, but the repeated, relentless attacks on Ana and teaming up with those who attack Ana, I think, are the main primary thing.
And I did. That is until things started to turn for TYT politically. And this started happening around the pandemic. Around the pandemic, Ana Kasparian seemed to become focused on the issue of homelessness, especially in a city that I used to call home, which is San Francisco. She had an objectively scary experience with an unhoused person, and in fact, I went back to see when she told her audience about this.
You gotta love the vague language and the disassociative language right there that she's using in order to describe what happened to Ana. She had an objectively scary experience with an unhoused individual, which, could lead you to believe that maybe, just maybe, Ana stumbled into a haunted house and they were both scared by the skeleton that fell from the ceiling, and it was just such an objectively scary moment for them, but they got along, they shook hands, and they had a wonderful time. Again, I just described to you an objectively scary experience with an unhoused person, when in reality, what actually happened is that Ana was sexually assaulted by a homeless person who was with another person. They were likely on drugs or mentally ill, and yes, they are agents in their own lives, and by the way, they are likely responsible for their own homeless status, make no mistake about it. So yeah, Francesca, nice little downplay right there, nice little weaseling out, but the point that she's trying to get to is even dumber.
And I do remember the day that Ana told the story on air. In fact, I was also on after she told that story, but I didn't hear it at the time. It was within an interview that she was doing with an author by the name of Michael Schellenberger, who had written the book San Francisco, Why Progressives Are Ruining Cities. Instead of focusing on housing market prices, on how homelessness often leads to things like addiction and mental illness, Schellenberger focuses on Democrats who thinks go too easy on the unhoused. I remember that I jumped onto the show right after he got off, after that interview, and the TYT audience was really pissed because they felt like the framing and the platforming of someone like Schellenberger was a disservice to the issue of homelessness, mental illness, and addiction.
So as a part of the research for this video, I actually pulled up the interview in question, and it will be linked in full in the description, but I just want you guys to understand that the way that Francesca is characterizing the homeless problem as if it is a consequence of high rent prices, which, by the way, as if that's not a consequence of Democratic policy, is absurd from top to bottom. First and foremost, San Francisco, just like New York City, and every city with a massive amount of rent control, has decreased supply. They also have a bunch of environmental regulations that decrease supply, and that ends up leading to the higher rental prices. But the point that Schellenberger wanted to make in that particular interview was the fact that the people who are going to San Francisco to live on the streets are doing so because they are being supported and enabled by the government over there. In addition to that, Francesca has an insanely stupid position that people become homeless because of high rent prices, because of the landlords and the capitalists, and then they end up on the streets and suddenly they're schizophrenic. Suddenly they're addicted to drugs. When in reality, the overwhelming majority of times, the opposite way is true. They're a drug addict, they lose control over their habit, that's how they end up on the streets, and then they're enabled by the city of San Francisco. Or they have a mental illness that ends up getting worse over time, which happens to many mentally ill people. They can no longer function in society, and guess what? Then they end up on the streets in places like San Francisco, or by the way, places anywhere. So the idea that the homelessness, the high rent price, the capitalism, which is what this ultimately ends up rooting in, ends up causing the mental illness and the drug addiction is an idea and a concept so stupid, so unbelievably devoid of all reason. Of course it came out of this woman's mouth. And by the way, Schellenberger and Kasparian, they did not rag on the homeless throughout the course of that interview.
I also support more housing. In fact, I wrote a column in 2019 calling for more housing, an emergency declaration by the governor of California for more housing. But as soon as I did, I had a number of people email me and say, hey, you can't just describe the people living in open drug scenes, what we call homeless encampments on Skid Row in LA or the Tenderloin in San Francisco, as simply not being able to afford the rent. This is a problem that's driven by drug addiction and untreated mental illness. I interviewed one of the major homeless service providers in Los Angeles, what percentage of people he thought living on the streets were suffering from substance use disorder, which is what we call addiction these days. And he said 100%. And I thought that sounded crazy high. So I thought maybe he was conservative. So I interviewed a very progressive woman who became a character, a real person, Susan Partovi, harm reduction advocate, works with people on the streets. And I asked her, and she said 100%. She said people don't come to live here if they can't afford the rent. People come here for the open drug scene, which is people living in the open air drug market. So there's definitely a housing part of this, but I think we're doing a disservice to people suffering late stage addiction and untreated mental illness to suggest that they're on the street because they couldn't afford the rent. People who can't afford the rent, as you know, millions of people can't afford the rent in California and have moved out of state or moved into a lower rent apartment or moved in with friends and family. The folks that end up on the street overwhelmingly are people who, because of their addiction and untreated mental illness, ended up on the street.
Again, watch it for yourself. I implore you. It will be linked in the description of this video, because what you'll end up discovering if you actually go to the interview yourself is that Schellenberger and Kasparian are offering different progressive solutions to the homelessness issue, and they're replacing the idea of housing first with shelter first. And one of the reasons why is practicality, because Schellenberger and Kasparian both point out that it takes forever to build out these apartments in places like California. So if you can get these people sheltered maybe treat their addictions, maybe see if they have serious mental illnesses and work on that. That should be better. And by the way, what you should use as a stepping stone in order to try to get them into some kind of subsidized apartment. So these people were not going after the poor or the homeless or anything of the sort. But the fact that Schellenberger and Kasparian said that the current idea of, oh, we'll just build housing or whatever, and we'll leave them and enable them and give them needles, that's what's pissing off Francesca Fiorentini.
Everybody wants to see a treatment first approach, but we're now seeing a very significant shift from a housing first approach, which is the idea that we're going to just provide apartment units for everybody who wants one at a cost of around $750,000 to $1 million per unit to people in the most expensive housing real estate areas of the United States. We're moving from that, which is obviously unrealistic. I think that's been shown by the reality on the ground, to a shelter first approach. I think most of us who are on the left or even the center left, I think believe that people do have a right to shelter. It's immoral to let people sleep on the street. But that doesn't mean that we can provide everybody with their own apartment in Venice Beach or Beverly Hills or downtown LA. There are limits to that. It creates perverse incentives. You don't have to be a dogmatic, conservative, free market libertarian to know that that's just not going to work. The cost is just too high. California is lucky to be the 5th largest economy in the world. We have a $30 billion budget surplus. We could have, Anna, the same high quality psychiatric and addiction care that Amsterdam, the Netherlands, has, and which I use as the case study for San Francisco. There's no reason that we couldn't be world class in our treatment of our most suffering fellow friends and family. My aunt suffered from schizophrenia. She did okay in a residential home. We can do so much better than letting people live in their own filth, drug addicted, and dying in tents on the street.
The fact that they assigned any responsibility, and I mean any responsibility at all whatsoever, to homeless people and to the Democratic Party, that is the bug up her butt that she's pissed off about. And again, it just goes to show you how absolutely insane these people are. Because when you watch that segment, when you watch that interview, what you'll find out is that you'll come away disagreeing with Schellenberger and Kasparian, especially if you're somebody in my audience who disagrees with me, because they're both too soft on the issue. I think Anna has gotten better on the homelessness issue since that point in time, but back then, that was already too far for Francesca Fiorentini. You dare treat a homeless person like they're an agent in their own life and not just impacted by the landlords, the evil capitalist landlords who not only threw them off the streets, but before they left, before they evicted them, they dusted them with mental illness powder and addiction powder. Wow, just Anna, you're so horrible. No, Francesca, you're an absolute fool. You're an absolute doofus. I mean, again, she genuinely thinks that people, because rents are too high, are becoming mentally ill when they hit the streets and then getting addicted to drugs, rather than the mental illness and the pre-existing issues that they have leading to them being homeless. Insane in every possible way. And again, I'm talking about the overwhelming majority of cases. I'm sure that there are some people who are living on the streets and then they ended up getting addicted afterwards. But the overwhelming majority of cases, it's the other way around. Make no mistake about it.
Instead of focusing on housing market prices, on how homelessness often leads to things like addiction and mental illness, Schellenberger focuses on Democrats who thinks go too easy on the unhoused.
You know what? I thought I was done, but I just gotta add one more thing. You cannot know and point out that a huge portion of the homeless population are actually returning veterans who are suffering from things like post-traumatic stress disorder, and then make the case that the reason they have post-traumatic stress disorder is because they're homeless. No, they have the issues. They got the issues from fighting in wars when they're veterans, all the horrors that they saw over there. Then they come back over here, and then they end up homeless because they can't manage those issues. How can you even make that opposite case? What's wrong with you?
Since then, she's gone on to cover critical stories from a right-wing framing, like the alleged takeovers of buildings by Venezuelan gangs in Aurora, Colorado, like the mentally ill, undocumented man in Los Angeles who was found lighting fires, but who was not responsible for the wildfires themselves in January. Throwing progressive mayors like Brandon Johnson of Chicago under the bus because he listens to teachers too much.
So look, we've covered all these different points that Francesca has talked about. The Venezuelan gang takeover of buildings in Aurora, Colorado, that turned out to be true. There was a video of it. You have representatives and police reports that go back far beyond that original video. But whatever, she denies that because she's an absolute doofus in every possible way. And now they're nitpicking and fighting over what does a building takeover actually mean. Second, she ends up bringing bringing up the guy who was arrested, who she describes as mentally ill, for setting fires, but she says, oh, that person wasn't responsible for the wildfire. Well, congratulations, Francesca. Ana never accused him of that. She just reported on the story of this person setting fires in the California wildfires and the neighborhood that ended up stopping them. And you ended up having a problem with that because you want the cover up of the homeless fires that, by the way, we see is government policy in a place like Los Angeles. 17,000 fires, by the way, were set by homeless people in 2024. That's almost half of the fires for the year total. And Francesca Fiorentini is on the cover up train.
Throwing progressive mayors like Brandon Johnson of Chicago under the bus because he listens to teachers too much. Ana's actually really skilled at what she does, so the laziness with which she treats these stories really just stands out all the more.
That third thing right there, those two sentences back to back are worthy of an entire video on its own, because here you have Francesca saying that Ana is throwing the progressive, innocent Beba Angel black mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, under the bus because he listens to teachers too much. Oh my god, Ana Kasparian hates teachers? Oh, you know what's crazy about this is that Ana's really good at what she does, so the laziness in the stories and her coverage of those stories, it's super noticeable from somebody like Francesca Fiorentini. But here's the thing, Francesca, you're really terrible at what you do, and you're also terrible at lying. And the reason why Brandon Johnson is being criticized by a bunch of people, including Ana Kasparian, is not because he listens to the teachers, because it's a scandal in the city of Chicago that he is on leave from the Chicago Teachers Union, and he's tried multiple times in order to borrow money at terrible interest rates in order to pay off said teachers union in a contract that he will benefit. So he is corrupted not only by the teachers union money that is flooded into his campaign coffers, but in the fact that he is a representative of the teachers union, and he has tried multiple different times. He's fired an entire school board. He's tried to oust the CEO of Chicago Public Education in order to get a crammed down high interest loan in order to pay off the Chicago teachers. So the issue right there is corruption, a conflict of interest. That's what's being covered. That's what's being highlighted. Not that he listens too hard to the teachers in the city of Chicago, but of course, Francesca Fiorentini is a lazy liar in addition to everything else, and she can never frame any argument from the other side accurately because she's a propagandist. That's a perfect example of what we're talking about.
Then in 2019, we went out to lunch in Los Angeles at an awesome spot that she knew of. And Ana confided to me that she was frustrated about leadership at TYT. How she wasn't involved in day-to-day decision-making, and how Cenk viewed her more as a kid sister rather than a co-equal partner. And at the time, she wanted to branch out on her own and do videos on a new channel. I implored her at that moment to stay. I said that it's always women that tend to walk away from organizations, even when they've helped build them up to the point that they're at. I told her to fight for more of a decision-making role and to not walk away. And she did. And it looks like the editorial decisions that we see being made at TYT are in part because she now has the reins. In a way, I'm proud of her, even if I don't like the coverage.
Now, Francesca also says, oh my god, she basically saved and kind of made Ana Kasparian's career in another story. Again, a very opportunistic framing by Francesca of her as this innocent little baby angel who's just a progressive person, a girl's girl, cares so hard about women's. But Ana and Cenk, oh my god, they're so bad. They're capitulating to right-wing framing. I mean, Ana is actually talking about how Brandon Johnson, the mayor of the city of Chicago, is overwhelmingly funded by the teachers union in the city of Chicago, is actually a member on leave of the teachers union in the city of Chicago, and how he's corruptly trying to borrow money at terrible interest rates in order to pay off said union, to which he will financially benefit from that when he stops being the mayor of the city of Chicago. What a horrible person. What a terrible lady. Ana actually believes that maybe you should deal with the mental illness and the addiction that homeless people have on the streets of places like San Francisco, somewhere that's near and dear to Francesca's heart. She loves San Francisco. She loves the needles and crap all over that particular city. And just, you know, golly gee, Ana's such a bad lady. Francesca's so good. She was like, oh God, I listened and I believed her and I encouraged her. And now Ana is where she is today because of who? Because of Francesca Fiorentini. Oh, I'm not backstabbing her. I'm not publicly attacking Ana, lying about her in this particular video in order to prop up the next thing I'm launching. No. You don't understand. I was the bestest friend to Anna. I was the bestest friend to Cenk. I was basically like the best person ever at TYT. You know, their worst and one of their dumbest contributors that they've ever had, but such a good person.
In 2022, I think we went out to lunch and he asked me if I wanted to work with TYT full time. And it gave me pause. Look, I work with a number of outlets. I am a stand-up comedian. I value my free time, and I have my own show. I wanted time to do those things.
So first of all, fact check false on her being a stand-up comedian, but secondly, she's gonna complain about being a contractor time and time again, but then she talks about at one point in time where Cenk was like, hey, would you be interested in a full-time position? And she's like, honestly, I wasn't sure that's what I wanted. Again, this woman turned down a full-time position for better pay, according to her, at Al Jazeera, worked as a contractor, apparently was offered employment maybe once, maybe twice at the Young Turks, and she wasn't sure if that's something that she actually wanted, if that was actually something that she was interested in, but somehow it is Cenk's fault and the company's fault that she wasn't a full-time employee with benefits. Again, absurd. Crazy in every possible way, a total lack of connection with reality. And it's not like Francesca's 22 years old, she's 41 or 42 at this moment in time, and she can't take any accountability for her own actions.
You should always ask for an offer before you pledge loyalty to anyone or any company. An offer never came, because in my view, loyalty wasn't a given. All this to say, I'm not sad to leave TYT behind, especially now, with of course, the exception of the damage report with John Idarola, who I care about and I think is so talented. But we live in a time of right-wing monsters, authoritarians, and yes, fascists. And anyone capitulating to their framework about human rights, about policing, around militarism, is not serious about liberation or democracy. Please, never watch anyone who can't admit when they're wrong.
So a couple of things. First and foremost, Francesca is telling you not to watch her because she is incapable of taking accountability for her own life, of admitting that she's wrong. Again, unless it's to an even further left, dumb or progressive. But I do want to point out the discontinuity that we just saw there, because over the course of a sentence, her hairstyle ended up changing 3 different times. And again, this is because this is very staged. She likely didn't like her take. She didn't feel like she was given the victimhood narrative enough at that moment in time. So there's cuts, camera reframes, and hair reframes that I just find to be absolutely fascinating, because it goes to show you that Francesca cannot get through a sentence normally, rationally, especially when she's trying to say, oh, I care about so many people at the Young Turks. Then it's like a smash cut to a slightly different angle, completely hairstyle. And she's like, oh, John Idarola, I think I'm supposed to say that guy's name. I really do appreciate him. And oh, so many people at the network that I truly care about. The little people at the network, because I'm Francesca Fiorentini. I'm such a good and kind and honorable person. Did you know that I basically made Ana Kasparian the executive producer at the Young Turks? And then she had the nerve to say that homeless people don't magically become mentally ill when rents go up too much.
I am one person with a scrappy YouTube channel who pieces together my annual living. I have a fraction of the following of TYT, which is $1 million media company. The idea that they choose to focus on me or other leftist creators in their field is honestly really disheartening and very revealing.
So this is the weaselly tactics that the left often always deploys, and it gets deployed against the Young Turks time and time again, which is, oh my god, I was attacking them repeatedly. I attacked Anna. I went super personal, super low, super nasty. I ended up using her own experience, which now I'm describing as, you know, akin to going to an amusement park and going into a haunted house with a homeless person. Objectively scary experience with an unhoused person. Was he the attacker or not? Oh, I can't assign any accountability to the criminal that attacked her. I mean, it was a sexual assault, but I don't care because homeless takes precedent over friend and female in this particular instance. But oh my god, I'm just a scrappy little up-and-coming YouTuber. I'm just working on my own, and oh my god, they attacked me. And it's very revealing that they would use their platform in order to attack me. I mean, I attacked them 10x more times on all of my platforms, went on other people's platforms to go out of my way to do so. show, ended up calling them immoral, too immoral to host my podcast. But the fact that they would respond to me, that they would even mention little old me, little old Francesca, oh gosh, so sad, so revealing about them. Again, Francesca, the irony of you going after Cenk for acting like a bitch, when you're doing this right now, you attack, you throw the first punch, and then when somebody strikes you back, like the little brat that you are, your parent, you call out to them and you say, oh my god, mommy, he hit me, even though we all understand that you started it. Again, act like an adult. You're 41 years old. You have a kid of your own. It's time to grow up, Francesca, and stop trying to play the victim. When a bigger channel or whatever attacks you, that's a good thing. That helps promote you. If your ideas are better, you go up against them, you end up gaining a following from that. You want all the benefits of that while also trying to discourage future attacks because, oh, you're such a little baby victim, innocent Beba Angel Francesca.
Look, I wish the best for the people of TYT, but as for the main hosts, I kind of just wish them peace. Because it's been a long, long road with many skeletons in many closets. And honestly, I don't think they know where that road is going. And it's going to be really sad when they respond to this video or try to smear me as if there weren't so many other pressing things to talk about. But I just had to get it off my chest, explain to you what's going on, and tell you that I am the host of the Bitchuation Room podcast.
I mean, honestly, shut up, Francesca. Just shut the hell up and stop your little crybaby husband, Matt Lieb, from going out and crying on your behalf because he's doing the same exact thing to Ethan Klein. Turns out that guy was a moderator on the subreddit that was encouraging the fraudulent CPS calls about Ethan Klein's children over political disagreements. And then when Ethan pointed that out, Matt Lieb went full bitch mode and was like, oh my god, Ethan shouted me out. So, because he's attacking me and because I feel harassed, in my community that we encouraged, a CPS report on Ethan's kids and they visited his house and we're actually using the system to harass him, not to mention taking away resources from actual children that are being abused. I'm now endorsing that behavior, which he did on Twitter, because it's all a big joke. It's all fun and games because Ethan disagreed like 2% on the issue of Israel-Palestine. Again, they keep framing Ethan as this radical pro-Israel guy. That's just not the case. He's super pro-Palestine. He had a minor disagreement with Cenk's nephew, but Matt Lieb is like, that is enough for him to endorse calling CPS on his family. And again, he plays the victim just like Francesca is right here. Absolute cowardice from top to bottom. You're using this to promote yourself and then you're saying, oh, you should be above attacks because you're such a little baby channel. Oh my god, your stupid ass podcast doesn't get that many views. So, it's just not fair for you to be held up to any kind of standard. I mean, you're not really an adult. You're not really a sentient human being, despite the fact that you're 41 years old and claim to be a girl boss feminist. You're a child. You talk like a 15-year-old child and you take accountability like a 15-year-old child. Actually, you're kind of worse. You basically have the accountability metrics of like a 4-year-old. Ridiculous and absurd from top to bottom. Good thing for her that she was fired. And now, of course, she's going to play victim and use this to promote her new network, which, by the way, she took her moral stance against the Young Turks after she already secured a position somewhere else. We all understand what's going on right here, but that's where I'm going to leave it. Now, of course, I want to know what you guys think about all this down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Francesca Fiorentini playing a little baby victim. Somebody get the babyest violin out there for her. Till next time.